So with him being in the hospital, we did a lot of screen time, which we don't normally do. How bad is screen time really? So the research out there, that's a really good question. The research out there is a little bit skewed, though there's not really great research on specific things like such as how Miss Rachel does her format of screen time, though there is pretty good research that supports that having over 2 hours a day under the age of 2 can be, and not necessarily, I would have to pull up the exact research article to give you exactly what they found, but from my understanding from the latest research, it's that a lot of screen time can be bad, though a little bit of screen time here or there is not a problem. We do know that there is a link to higher increased emotional variance, and as well as like just more easily frustrated, a lower ability to fall asleep at night, all of those things that we as adults are all warned of, and how screen time and enough time on movies or gadgets or just our phones alone can be bad for our brains or bad for our sleep, bad for our emotional regulation. Those will all impact your child very similarly, but we do also know that generally, when the best type of screen time for learning is with a human's face. That's why Miss Rachel is so great. That's why most SLPs really, really like her, because she actually took a lot of, her child was speech delayed, and she created this program because she didn't see anything out there like that for her son that was meant to improve speech and language. So she uses a lot of the strategies that I taught you throughout this time, and she also uses a lot of other general strategies that we know from children development and how to help support language and support learning generally. She's not a speech language pathologist. She does have her she has I think a master's in early childhood or a degree in early childhood, and she's working on a master's in something similar, though it's not to become a speech pathologist, but she is educated. She does know about child development, and she learned from speech pathologists to create what she does. So the use of her or anything with real people is preferred over cartoons. There's also some information out there about certain programming being more or less stimulating, and videos that have less sensory stimulation. Compare, like, I can't think of a good one that is out currently, but I have seen some videos of people comparing them. But think of, like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Caillou or Arthur. Those were maybe I don't know if they're even still around, but both of those would be less stimulating than, say, CoComelon, if you're familiar with any of those shows. So the less stimulation, the better it can be for just emotional regulation. And that's what I've learned from working with OTs and some of the OTs that I follow and learn from online. So something to keep in mind, but generally screen time is not terrible. I just recommend trying to reduce it if possible, trying to use less of it rather than more. But of course, like, oh my goodness, if he's in the hospital and I'm so sorry, he's still there and that's still going on for you. I cannot imagine how that has been for you guys. So but generally just know that my heart is with you guys, but also I especially for a short period of time, like when he is in dire need of stimulation, that it's not going to impact him detrimentally. We just know that the best way to support language is interaction with your child. So I would put you playing with your child and doing the things that we've talked about throughout these 6 weeks way over your, I guess my camera's a little bit covered, way over your screen time with your child, or way over even Miss Rachel. But that's really a really long drawn out answer, but I hope it helps a little bit. I wouldn't be too worried about it. It's so commonplace now, and it's not incredibly detrimental. We don't have the research to really back it up like super, super strongly either way, but we do know that there is some other negatives outside of screen time, but generally if your child's watching a lot of screens, they're doing less playing and they're doing less interacting with you. And from my experience in the research that I've read, that's more of the key factor rather than the screen time really hindering their speech or language. So generally speaking, I try to keep it under 2 hours for under 2 years old, and I would still try to keep it limited after that personally, though it's not necessarily a bad thing. Another thing too would be about electronic toys. I get asked about that a lot. We do know that there is some research out there that shows that when a child is playing by themselves with a toy that makes a lot of noises or has a lot of lights, specifically noises, they talk less than when they were to be playing with something that is not electronic at all. They talked a little bit more. And when the child and the parent played together with both of those types of toys, they both talked less with electronic toys. Makes sense, right? There's noises, you're listening, you're not talking as much. That lack of language stimulation can not negatively really impact them, but it's not as great as playing with typical toys. So that's another thing, that if you have a lot of the electronic toys can also be, again, overstimulating for children. So everything in moderation, right? It's not a perfect like black or white answer, but with electronic toys too, I would also try to limit them versus only have them. I know there's some kids out there that that's really all they like to play with, but the child needs to learn how to be bored in order to learn how to play with other toys as well. And you can help them do that by just playing with them, showing them how to play with toys, stacking blocks, or doing the cars in front of them. Those kind of things really help too. That was just another random tangent to go on since it sparked my brain, but what else are you thinking? And if you don't have any other questions, I would love to just know how things are going, like how you don't need to talk about it if it's with him being in the hospital and things, especially. I don't need you to say, especially because I am recording right now so I can post it, but and share this with everybody else. But if there is anything that you want to share about his language or just generally, I would be happy to hear that too. Okay, so for the past 6 to 7 months, he hasn't been responding to his name before he did. How do I try and get him to respond? That's a great question. If he's not responding to his name currently, the first thing would be, as we talked about, to make sure that his hearing has been screened, that we can clear that there's no difficulty there. Other than that, you can play like what I would say a name game, but it's more so you're on a waiting list for hearing. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good that you're on the list. Let's see how that turns out, because that can impact it too. If he, a red flag for hearing difficulties, I would say, is a child that has a lot of like swimmer's ear, a lot of ear infections, repeated ear infections. Those are the types of kids that usually get tubes in their ears, and that can really help support their hearing, which supports their language and speech development too. But it's great that you are on the list. I'm proud of you for that. But generally, how do you try to get him to respond is you can work on doing, like, showing him somebody else in the room, somebody else, you call their name, they dramatically turn to you. Look, wow. But one of the best ways that I usually do this with a child is if they even look at me a little bit or turn their head, I'll praise them a lot for it. For children who are not responding at all, I'll go and sit in front of them and I'll like look kind of away. And then when I'll say their name and then look at them. And as soon as I get even the smallest bit of eye contact, I will say, wow, great job, Dorian. Woohoo. Like give him a lot of praise, give him tickles, whatever he likes. But you're playing a game of like teaching that behavior. When a child isn't responding to their name, you want to make sure that they understand that their name that they understand that that is their name too. So any sort of showing them, like I've seen people read books to children, like mom's name is Courtney, dad's name is Dave, when sister's name is blah blah, and like just reading that through with them or going around and pointing to different people in the room. Dad is Dave, and then Dave turns, hi, Dave. And then maybe you could get to him, Dorian, as soon as he turns or looks towards any direction towards a human is usually where I start. And then I look for a little bit more as we grow. But if he looks at all in that direction, yeah, good job turning. Or good job showing me your eyes. For kids kids who are autistic, I will say, and I'm not saying that this is Dorian, I'm just speaking generally that when I talk about eye contact, I want to do it lightly because there is a lot of there's incoming not even that recent research that says that kids or autistic individuals, some of them actually do report, and their like pain receptors go off when they're making eye contact with somebody. So eye contact for some can be really uncomfortable, if not even painful. So for that reason, I'm not typically really, really pushing eye contact with children, but I want them to understand that what their name is and attend towards that direction of me calling them or whomever was trying to get their attention. They don't necessarily have to lock eyes with you, but trying to get them to understand, in order for us to know that he understands his name, we need to hear him, or we need to see him responding in some bodily way to his name, looking over towards you, walking in that direction. You can also play that same exact type of game with a baby, almost like, not a baby, but like with your child, and almost like playing when your child's learning to walk and you stand in front of them with your arms out waiting for them to walk to you. You could say, Dorian, see if he'll start to walk that direction as soon as he moves towards that direction of you trying to get him like visually to come to you. I would like reward that with a lot of positive praise as well. So eventually you want to be able to decrease the amount of gestures you're doing, like come here, and only call his name. But I would start with like Dorian, like try to really get his attention as soon as he looks, whoa, good job, or as soon as he starts to walk towards you, yay. But I find with models, if you have other people around, having somebody do that in front of the child too can help. I know that game that I just kind of made up may not make a lot of sense. Let me know if you want me to expand on that, but yeah, those are a couple of things that could help. He has really good eye contact, and we have been fobbed off by doctors because of that and say he's not autistic, but I still think he might be. Yeah, so eye contact is not the only thing that it shows us that a child may be autistic. Like I think we did talk about this a little bit. And again, I'm not talking about your son specifically, but I do think it's important to talk about just generally and be aware of, because so many parents are not aware of the signs and symptoms. But lack of eye contact is not necessarily even a sign of autism, but it's almost like a symptom of autism, or it could be a red flag if it's paired up with multiple others. But essentially we're looking for a behavioral component as well as a communicative component. And I believe the DSM just changed what the requirements are for like within the DSM to be qualified to be diagnosed for autism. I'm gonna look that up really fast to see if it has changed, to make sure I'm giving you um the correct information. Okay, so yeah, because we're still on the DSM-5. I thought there was an adjustment to it, but it looks like, yeah, we still have to have the persistent deficits in social communication and social interaction across multiple contexts. And then B is, I don't know, maybe B. So in the DSM, if you're not familiar, it is essentially a book of all of any, we'll say, psychiatric type disorders is what we'll say, or brain type disorders. That's really generalized, but when you look at it, and when a professional or a psychologist or psychiatrist looks at it, they have to qualify an individual with that disorder by that individual meeting all of the criterion involved. So usually that looks like A, B, C, D through however many there needs to be. And then there's smaller bullets under each of those, but they have to have 2 of the 3 categories, or 5 of all 5 categories. There's different like qualifications, we'll say. So for example, I'll read off the basics. Persistent deficits in social communication would be A. B is restricted repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. C is symptoms that must be, they have to be present in early developmental period, and symptoms cause clinically significant impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of current functioning. And then E is 3. These disturbances are not better explained by intellectual disability or global developmental delay. Those that, and it does go on to say, which is not incredibly common, but can be really common, that intellectual disability and autism can co-occur as well. But you want to make sure that they're different. You need the repetitive behaviors essentially for it to qualify as an autism diagnosis. But the one that I go off of generally when I describe autism to parents is what Ashley has on their website, which I really like because it generally it looks at all of the areas and gives you just some basic signs and symptoms, which is really like that impairment in social communication, impairment in language and related cognitive skills, behavioral and emotional challenges. So a really hard time, that might look like a really hard time like regulating themselves beyond the average toddler tantrum, I guess you could say. So you're looking at like a more severe, for lack of a better word, a more severe meltdown, or a meltdown that goes on for really, really long over something that seems really minimal or simple and not big of enough of a deal for you. I had kids, like, I say the bubbles are all done, I put them away, and they tantrum for like 45 minutes over that. But it's usually consistent too. You see that. Autism also sometimes commonly presents with feeding difficulties, and that can be for a variety of reasons. It's just another thing, but we're looking like difficulty initiating interaction with people, like they're not necessarily seeking you out and trying to get you to follow them and like tickles and laughs. They're not really interested in that. Definitely have feeding issues. Yeah. And that can be, there is a difference. Feeding is interesting because there's the differences from a picky eater to a child who has some sort of feeding disorder, essentially. Like they have either an oral motor system that's not working for them, that makes it hard for them to eat, or sensory difficulties that make it really difficult for them to expand their palate too. But we know how to treat those things. There are therapies usually solely provided by a speech language pathologist or an OT or a team of the both of them to get that diagnosed and then support. But if you have a lot of feeding issues that seem to be persistent, or it's like it seems to be around certain textures, or maybe we were eating things and then we're refusing to eat some of the things that we used to eat, and we're backing out of that. We're almost regressing in the amount of variety of food that we will eat. That can be not a sign of autism, but can be a sign. It can co-occur with autism for sure, and commonly does, but it's not necessarily a symptom, or not a symptom. It's not necessarily like a cause or tells us that it is autism. But if there is feeding concerns around that, a lot of times it's not happening because they just want to be a little stinker about it. Feeding is not behavior. Feeding is it's medical. So making sure that we rule out if there's any difficulties with the way that he's chewing, the way that he's swallowing. Can he swallow? Can he get the bolus, which is essentially what the food is in his mouth? Can he manipulate it in his mouth and control it enough to push it back and swallow it without being afraid that he's going to choke? Does he choke often? Does he throw up often? Does he gag a lot? Does he gag at the smell of things or the sight of different foods? And then there's a lot of different ways that we can help support that, such as like food chaining, or there's a lot of different therapeutic ways that we handle that. But yeah, really looking at like those main, those social areas. I will tell you the MChat is a really good tool. It does not mean if your child seems like they have a lot of those things that are in this assessment, it doesn't mean that your child is autistic, but it is something to, if you're considering it, or if you're at all worried about it. I've given it to a few parents to start that conversation with them, or if they've asked me about it, I was like, let's see, I only see your child for an hour a week. Let's talk about like what you're seeing, and are we seeing that across the board? But if you just go online and you Google m-chat, unless something randomly changed in the last like maybe max 1 year, probably less than that is the last time I Googled it. But you should be able to find it. Actually, since it's just the two of us, I can probably just pull it up and show it to you. Not sure if this is something you really are looking to pursue, but or look at, but it is a good place to start that I had some families use to just start talking about it. Download, agree. Okay, I will share it. I will share my screen with you. Okay, can you see this? This is the MChat. It is a checklist. It is very basic, but it's produced by people with their PhD, people who know what we're looking for. It is minor corrections, so it is the updated one from 2018, which is pretty recent. Like that's not bad. But I like it because it gives a simple questionnaire, and then you essentially count up the amount of yeses and the amount of no's, and then it says like, how do I say this, like a little bit more. I'll explain these charts in a second. Oh no. It essentially tells you if they're a little bit more likely, or you might want to like continue. Essentially it tells you should continue evaluation and look into getting your child evaluated further to rule out or rule in autism or something else. But it is used to talk about ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder. But pass and fail is essentially yes or no, and you make up a total score. But it's nice because each one that you look at, if you point something across the room, does your child look at it? Yes, okay, well, do they do this? Do they do this? There's like different steps that we want you to go through, and then you would determine pass or fail based on that. And it gives you a basic general review of that. But it's a good way to get some of those big key concerns into the conversation, and then to continue, and then it's something that can be continued with a higher level professional who can assess them and rule out or rule in autism. But I literally Googled MChat this, but I just Googled that and I found it. If you want, I can post it to our group chat too, though it very clearly states that somewhere in here, but it does not mean that your child is autistic based on this. I've had kids come up in this higher risk area or this medium risk area, and they're not diagnosed with autism. And I've also had kids show up in the medium or lower risk and they are diagnosed with autism. So there is a lot of variation, but it is a good teller to be like, let's get some more information here. Let's talk about it a little bit more. So that's a good one too. Let me know if you want me to post that in the group. I could probably do it really easily right now. But that's something I like to use generally. I want you to download. See if I can just pop this over there. I don't know why it's not downloading. Of course, yeah, I can put that in there. Let me know what other questions and stuff you got. We got about 12, 13 more minutes. Or if you want to just talk about some of the stuff or just talk about how your son's been doing, we can talk about that too. I don't know why it won't let me download it right now. I think I told you guys a couple weeks ago, I just got a new Mac, and I've used Macs before, but it's been a bit since I've had one, and I'm relearning. I'm relearning how to make everything work. Dorian has been doing really well. He is doing more signs and he's definitely trying to say stuff, but we have no clue what he's actually trying to say. Okay, so he's doing probably a little bit more babbling or vocalizations. Either of those are great. That's awesome. That's awesome. A child has to do a lot of vocal play or babbling or just vocal play even before babbling to get them talking. So that's really, really great. Awesome. He's definitely more vocal. That's great. And the signs. That's amazing. I love that. I do have on my TikTok and things, I have a lot of videos of signs. And I can show, I know we talked about them in the training, but I can show you some more too. Or it's really easy to find some on YouTube too. Is a great one as well. I have a student actually right now who uses my signing time, and I believe it is a paid prescription, subscription, not prescription. It's like, why does that sound weird? A paid subscription, but you can find the same stuff on YouTube. So I don't think you necessarily even need it, but it is it just teaches one word at a time. But if you go on YouTube, there's like signing dictionary for kids, and they'll like go through words. Some kids, I say that because not because you necessarily need it, but some kids really love doing, for some reason, that video of the kid doing the sign or the adult doing the sign, they want to imitate it and they want to do it too. And they interact well with you doing it and them doing it, and they tend to seem to be motivated by that. So it's just another tool in the toolbox that can be used and shared. So I don't know, I'm still trying to download this guy. Oh, file. I got it. So I will add it to. I'm gonna post it right now. I can do that pretty easily. Great tool, but it's not. All right, I just posted it. So that will be up for you too. It's Dorian's second birthday in October and was wondering if there's any items or toys that you could maybe recommend that could help with this speech. Absolutely. So I don't have like 100% things that are like, you need this in order to facilitate language. Because as you know from our 6 weeks, you can do it with anything. And the easiest way and the best way, in my opinion, to target any sort of language development is with things that are in their environment that they're already motivated by. But bringing in new toys is great. We talked about toy rotation, I believe, too. That can be really helpful in just creating new spontaneous language, or continuing the motivation is really big. So that's something I would keep in your back pocket of something to do, to just rotate a couple of the toys in and out every couple weeks or months. It doesn't even matter how often you do it. But second birthday in October, oh my gosh, he's getting so big. That's exciting. Anything with that cause and effect, I like to do things that you look at and you can say, okay, can I do push, pull, go, stop, eat, more, anything along those lines. If you can get any of that, wonderful. Pretend play toys are really great at start around that age. Think like your tool sets, your kitchens, your food items, like make ice cream with me. Your animal play sets, so like a farm with all the farm animals. All of those things are great because you can do so much with it. The cow's eating, eat, the cow's mooing, the cow's sleeping, the cow's jumping, jump, jump, jump. The cow's sitting, like any verb, you can have your animal or action figure do those things. Those are great too. I love for young boys, I've had a lot of success with, and it depends on the kid because some are really motivated by these things and others don't care. But like some of that pretend play, like with tools, can be fun because you're like hitting things and it's making noise. So the ones that like cause an effect might be a little bit more enticed to use that. I would take like the little saw and like pretend to saw different things. Ouch is a great target too. So if you're not opposed to getting a little silly with anything, you can take the hammer to, like, if you trust your child to not be too aggressive with it, to a body part on you or a body part on a different animal. If you're super against at that age, from my experience, we're not necessarily teaching aggression or anything along those lines. But if you're worried about, just X-nay that part. But I just try to get anything where I can get a reaction out of them. What is funny? What is fun? What is entertaining? There is a ball, like it's like it's essentially like a ramp with a bunch of balls, and you take a hammer and you hit it. You hit the ball down the ramp and there it goes, down, 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 down. It is something that is a little bit before a 2-year-old's level, I guess I would say, though it's a great cause and effect because it involves them having to engage with it in order to make it go. And you can easily target a lot of things with that. Um, all of our words. When I look for toys, I think, can I do go, stop, more, all done, like car sounds or anything along those lines. He has the ball ramp thing and he loves it. That's great. That's a good one. That's one that, oh my gosh, almost every place I've worked has, and even back in grad school, I was trying to take that into every session. Basic like blocks or big Legos are fun too. Train tracks, I really like those. Those are great because you push the trains around. They're a little bit different than the basic car ramps. It gives you more stuff to do with them. Books, you can start to move up some of those levels of books. I left that book list in the group too. You could check that out. But at that age, I do have some that start to really like taking things apart and putting them together. So there are different like either boards, or I've seen nowadays like some I just bought for my, not necessarily my nephew, he's my best friend's son. But he's actually my godson, so I like to almost call him my nephew, but he's not. He's actually a little bit older now, but something that I purchased from about a year ago, and this might be a little bit too high of a level for him specifically, but some kids who really like to put things together, there's now like little dinosaurs that are out there that have like nuts and bolts and essentially like a little screwdriver or an automatic screw gun for kids. And they can take the whole car or truck apart and put it all back together. I had a few kids in early intervention that were about 2, and they loved that. I had one little boy that had a little car, and he could take all the screws out and put all the car pieces together or like change the colors of the car, and he loved that. Taking things apart and putting them together is great. Also, don't shy away from like sensory bins if your kid's a sensory seeker, which everybody is to some extent, but what do they really get the most joy out of? Like, have you ever played with slime and really enjoyed it and felt it calming and soothing? Of course, everybody has something along those lines, but different sensory bins, different things that touch that feel or smell or look a little different. Specifically in the tactile, like different touch can be fun for kids to play with too. Those things are tough because they usually don't last long, because if they're sticky or if they have texture to them, after a while they get dirty or that texture goes away. So those are great for like short periods of time or to bring out every now and then, but that gives you a good handful of things. Is there anything Is there anything else specifically you're looking for? Like I said, I would try to avoid it's okay to have like little electronic things, but like the Leapfrog stuff, Leapfrog, great company. It can be motivating for some kids, but honestly, when I have electronic toys that kids like, I literally just work on and off with them. I just turn it off and then I see if they'll tell me to turn it on. That's all I do with it at all because it's hard to interact with otherwise. So I typically only do that. But those pretend play toys are great too. Awesome, Chloe, great. Well, okay, if there's anything else, let me know. But can I ask you, were you able, well, you've been at most of these, but were you able to access all the videos and everything on the Facebook page okay? I just want to make sure everything's kind of wrapped up and good there. Awesome. Okay, thank you for letting me know. And thank you again so much for your your review. I think I either emailed you already or I will be emailing you tonight, but thank you for that. Let me know if there's ever anything that comes up that you'd be interested in. But other than that, wonderful. It was so wonderful to work with you, and I really hope that your son gets better. I'm so sorry for whatever's going on, and my prayers and thoughts and everything are coming your way and your family's way. I cannot imagine what you're going through. So sending you lots of love and hope that everything gets back to normal for you guys pretty quickly. That can be really stressful. Of course. Thank you so much for being here. Have a good night.